Welcome, everybody, to the CFF List Waiver Watch Draft for Week 9. I'm Jay Mill. I've got my partner, Willie B, as usual, and we're joined once again by Joe Arpazzi, Purple Rain from Twitter. Welcome, everybody. How's everybody doing today?
Good.
Yeah, man, doing really good. I'm recovering after a rough Saturday in Bloomington, Indiana.
Yeah, not so good for the Huskies. We had a little
No.
pre-recording talk about that, but I mean, there's worse teams. They still look solid, but just Indiana is clearly the real deal this year. That's for sure.
Mm.
Yep. Um, well, we'll do a quick recap as usual. As you guys that have been following us know, we're in the semi-final rounds of our waiver draft. The top 5 performers from the first 7 weeks have been kind enough to rejoin us for a second round. And we'll take the top 2 into the finals. So good luck, Joe. Nice job getting over 100 on your last performance. And for those that don't know, Joe, I would call him one of the original CFF pioneers, going back to his college football geek days. One of the original guys to be out there doing CFF analyst work. He's now doing letpurplerain.com. Give us a quick idea of what people can find at Let Purple Rain. I know you're doing the forecasting. You're going even in more depth than we do here in the pickups. You've got tons and tons of players that people can pick up every week. But in 30 seconds here, Joe, what's the main benefit of going over to letpurplerain.com?
Main benefit is I'm going to be doing year-round CFF content. Right now we're in season, so I'm giving you things that apply to during the season, during the winter, spring, build up for the drafts. There's going to be content all year round that you can find on there that you can find easily. So drafts is what a lot of people get excited for. You can go to one page, you can see where we have all the mock drafts, where we have a draft guide, sleepers. So it's not just a one time of year. This is all year content that you can go get from letpurplerain.com.
Nice. Well, we're happy to have you back. Like I said, quickly, we'll go through a recap of the Week 9 performances. I have to say, after I started off the season on the hot side, it's now Willie B's turn. He had the top score from last week, eclipsing that kind of magical number of 90 that we like to target. You got 94.2, identical score to your Week 8 number. And I did the math, and looks like over the last 4 weeks, Willie B is averaging 101, which is a lot harder than it sounds, right, Willie?
Oh, absolutely. And Mr. John Michael Dillenborg, thanks for the 1.6, or we probably would have gotten to 100. Yeah, it is tougher than we let on. That's for sure.
Yeah, but I will say your quarterback there, Sawyer Robertson, he might be the hot commodity tonight. He was rostered on 10% of teams last week. He's still under the qualifying number of 30%. So I have a feeling one of us might try to grab him again this week. We'll see how that goes. The running back that you had lead the way, Rasul Faison from Utah State. We've been talking about him probably since he took over the backfield after his teammate went down with a season-ending injury there, and he wasn't sharing the load anymore. Probably Week 5 we started talking about him, and he appeared on the waiver draft. I think I took him first. I'll give myself a quick pat on the back. But impressive thing, Willie and I were talking earlier, in the last 4 weeks, it's been really fun to watch him go from, I think, 17 points to 20 points to 24 points to now his season high of 27 for you. But a lot of leagues, he's not going to be around anymore. He's finally over that 30% mark. So he's a back that won't be eligible today. We're going to have to find some other picks.
But hey, how appropriate. He gets his season high the last week that he's under 30% and on your show.
There you go. Very good.
Right.
Yep,
and then we were also talking this morning, and I was telling Jay Mill, I said, we look at his carries of him having over 20 carries for the last 5 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, but with Royals gone now, these guys who were picking up on him weeks ago, it's going to pay dividends now
Mhm.
going forward.
Yeah, that Royals
I was
crazy.
I was talking about Robertson at least month and a half ago. Like it's when you
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to shows like yours, waiver wire articles like I released on letpurplerain.com, like you'll catch on to these guys very early, and then it's that matter of when does it make sense? Can he be a piece in my lineup instead of you wait till the end when everybody's trying to jump on him?
Exactly.
Right.
And again, even though Faison's at 35%, which seems low, it seems like in any competitive league, he's taken. So good luck trying to find him, even
Mhm.
though, Fantrax is claiming he's only rostered in 35. Normally we save those kind of comments for the end of the show, but, he was your second highest score. Hats off to Dorian, my son, who made the semifinals and turned in a 70-point performance with two unexpected. He had the running back Thomas from Memphis, who just went missing. We're not sure why. It didn't have any notes. I would guess maybe injured. He didn't have a target or a carry. And then Lewis Brown, who just decided to make the coaches angry, but it wasn't announced until game day. So, our rule is if there's an injury prior to Wednesday, we can make a substitution. But Dorian had to stick with Lewis Brown in the starting lineup there, even though we found out early Saturday he was suspended for missing some team meetings. But he still managed a 70-point game. Not bad. And as I mentioned in the post this morning, my team wasn't horrible, but it was very mediocre at best. I had a quarterback with 15, and just about everybody else got 10 points or right around 10 points. So nothing to write home about, but we've certainly seen worse scores here with some guys in the 40s and the 50s in the past. We try to stay away from that. So we'll call this week decent, but Willie B was the star. Now let's get down to business and see where we end up on this bye heavy week. I believe probably more teams for the bye week 10 than any other week. Joe and I were talking about that prior to the recording. It's a little tougher for people this week because it seems like 30 teams, maybe even more, must be on a bye. I haven't done the math, but half the guys I put down on my notes when I went to see who they were playing this week, they were on a bye. So we might mention some of those at the end that you still might want to try to pick up for your playoff spots, but we'll save that for the end. Joe, we use the old randomizer. You got the first pick. Willie, you'll get two at the end, and then we'll come back. So let's see who you got. Who you're starting this thing off with?
I know you guys sent me the draft order, but I didn't pay attention because I've been traveling this weekend.
Okay.
All right, juice. First pick.
I'm sure you want to pass, so
Yeah, you
no,
don't
I'm
want to
not
skip.
passing. Man, I think I'm gonna say this because we got all these bye weeks, and it's the playoffs, so everybody knows. Like I'm just gonna roll the dice here. I'm gonna go big or go home.
Okay.
And I'm swinging for home runs or I'm striking out.
Okay.
That's my attitude for this. I'm not going to try and play it safe.
I like it.
So with that attitude in mind, I'm going to go quarterback first.
Okay.
And I'm going to take Colton Joseph from Old Dominion.
Okay.
Nice.
He's got Appalachian State. For those that don't know, Colton Joseph, he's kind of more of a running back in a quarter's back clothing, if that makes any sense here.
Yep.
And when you look at the Appalachian rush defense, they're ranked 124th in fantasy points allowed. They give up 5.6 yards per rushing attempt, and they give up almost 2.5 rushing touchdowns a game. And then their pass defense is not very good either. They're ranked 110th in fantasy points allowed and 2 touchdowns a game. So the fact that he's normally a runner, but they're also bad against the pass, I'm just thinking maybe he can have a big game. It's still too early. I don't know what Vegas is calling. They haven't come up with a line for them, so I don't know what Vegas thinks Old Dominion might come up with. But he's a hot hand, so I'm going to swing for the fences there with my number 1 pick.
Yeah, he's since he's taken over, he's had some really big games. He was one of the 4 that I had on my list. I know we only
he's number 1 on mine.
He was number 1 on Willie B's.
So I was looking between him and another number 1, and I'm just like, who do I think's not going to make it back after 4 picks before mine? And I'm just like, I'm going to just go big.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I like it also. Now the pressure's on me. This is interesting. I mean, I knew I was going second, but I had taken my notes, but I wasn't certain about the priority here. So I think I will go with, what do I want to do here? I think I'm going to go, I'll go tight end. There's one that really stood out to me who's coming along. I like his matchup a lot, and that's Sam Roush from Stanford. So
Okay,
I'll go
nice.
against the grain, get my tight end out of the way, buy myself a little more time for the other positions. He's rostered in 24% of teams. He's a name we know from the past that, was maybe in most people's top 25, top 30 list for tight ends this year, but he really hasn't made his way to the top until these last couple of weeks. Even though he's only averaging 7.8 the last 2 weeks, he's had the hot hand with 13.5 and 17.6, and more importantly, or equally as important, 8 targets in each of the last 2 weeks, which means Stanford is looking for him now. He's become a key part of that offense. So I'll go with Stanford tight end Sam Roush. Going against North Carolina State, by the way, who's given up 13 touchdowns in the air and is 104th in pass D. So that should help also.
Well, I like it. That was a little bit of a surprise. He was not my number two. I wanted to get two number one guys on my list, but since you went tight end, I'll have to switch this.
Okay.
But I'm going to go with the guy that you've been taking a lot, J Mill, and that's going to be Ahmad Hardy.
Okay. Yeah.
He was my other one. I was deciding between the
Well,
first
that's
pick.
interesting because I had him last week, and it was one of he kind of disappointed, but I wasn't afraid to go back to the well. He was on my list for this week also. So I don't
Yeah,
I don't I
yeah,
don't
and I get that they're playing Marshall, but I was looking at Marshall's defense. I want to say it was around
really bad.
97th last week, and now they're at 120.
Yeah,
So against running back. So I think he'll have an uptick this week.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that Marshall defense is really bad against the run. They're actually 110th in terms of yardage allowed, and they've given up 17 touchdowns, which is pretty
Oof.
horrible. Nearly three rushing touchdowns a game. So you
Well, I
got
mean,
the right matchup.
and the other thing to add on top of it, of all the running backs that are kind of out there sitting on the waiver wire, he's got week in and week out the best workload. Like nobody's getting as many touches as he's getting at the running back position, which is why I was debating between him and Joseph on that first pick of just
Yep.
like to me, Hardy's that great. He's an awesome floor play. Like he's going to be awesome on your team. That was a tough one. Why I paused and I was like, I don't know which way to go because Hardy's really good this week.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then when I was looking at my list, the running backs were really scarce. So I'm going to hit that again. We're going to go Devon Booth from
Mm-hmm.
Mississippi State. They get UMass this week.
Okay.
So this is going to be the week that he gets back into the end zone. It's been about a month,
Okay.
but it hasn't hurt his point production. He's, 3 weeks ago against Georgia, 10.4, then he had 19, and then he had 21.7 against Arkansas. So look for him to get around 100 yards and finally reach pay dirt and hopefully get, roughly 16 to 20 points.
Okay. All right. I like it. I'm going to bounce back to me, and I'll take a guy that I don't think many people know about because I'm just looking here. It says he's rostered on 0% of teams,
Hmm.
but I know I have him in the 50-team league that Thor runs.
In the Big 12?
Nope, UTSA. Chris Carpenter,
Oh, okay.
wide receiver.
Okay.
Chris Carpenter. He's
Interesting.
the one of the starters there at UTSA. I started noticing, a lot of targets going his way a few weeks ago. Picked him up in the 50-team league again, Thor Nystrom runs, and it was a real fun competitive league that I happen to be 6-2 in. So I'm really happy about that because that's a big payout if I can get into the money there. But his targets have gone way up the last 4 weeks. He's had at least 9 targets in every game, which has come along with 6 or 7 catches in all of those games. He turned that into a 26-point game this weekend against Tulsa. So I really like his trajectory, the way he's going. They're playing Memphis, who gives up a decent amount of yards, maybe not as many touchdowns as I would like, but I think this is a kid that's on the rise, and I'm giving you a perfect late season pickup that you're almost guaranteed to be able to get because Fantrax is showing him at 0%. So maybe it's 0.4, whatever it is, because I know I have him. So
Yeah.
not too.
I don't love him this week, but as far as like what you just said,
Yeah.
I absolutely do weeks 12 through 14.
Right.
Yeah, and the best thing about him moving forward, McEwen has been shaky this year.
Mm-hmm.
He's like yesterday he had a good game. That's been the thing that's been holding back the UTSA passing game this year is
Right.
inconsistent quarterback play. And it's like if he can he's playing at a good level right now, just maintain it the rest of the way.
Yep.
Because when they slump at that position, everybody suffers at the receiver spot.
Right. Right. And if you can grab him now, stash him, because like Willie B said, he's got a bye next week, but then he's got North Texas and Temple to carry you through the playoffs. Both of those teams are kind of in the bottom third, maybe the bottom quarter in terms of yardage allowed. So he's a good playoff hole filler there if you're looking for somebody that you're almost guaranteed to be able to grab. So.
Well, and I love what you just described. What I like to advocate to people, if you're looking at waiver wire pickups, don't pick up a guy that people like us have been talking about for weeks, the week that you need to plug him in. Pick him up when he goes into a bye. Nobody else is going to try and touch a guy when he's going into a bye. Like, get those guys 1 or 2 weeks early. So a guy like Carpenter, he has a moderate to above average matchup this week, then a bye. You're going to see a bunch of people 3 weeks, actually exactly 2 weeks from now, all try and jump on him if he's available. Like, make the move before the crowd makes the move. Like, that's how successful stock traders do it. They don't wait for everybody else. Take the same approach when you're going after waiver wire guys.
Exactly.
Yeah, and not saying that this is a bad pick, J Mel. It's more of, okay, this is when you need to get him right now.
Yep.
And so obviously this is this is why J Mel takes him now.
Right. Even though it's Memphis who hasn't given up a ton of TDs, they're still giving up yardage. So I still think a good pick for this week if you do need to plug in a hold for this week also. So with that, Joe, let's see who you got.
Okay, I'm going to go to running back since 2 of them are off the board here. Okay. And I'm going to take a guy who's been on fire. He's finally playing the way that we thought he would all the way back in the summer and draft season. I'm going to take Javon Jackson from UTEP.
Okay.
And he's got a matchup here with Middle Tennessee. I do have a Vegas line on this one. Vegas is expecting UTEP to score 27 points, which for UTEP is pretty good. Some things I like whenever I look at an offense's conversion rates and then a defense, I like to look for a defense which is giving up more conversions than the offense converts. So a good example here, UTEP is only converting 30% of third downs, while Middle Tennessee is giving up 50% conversions allowed to opposing offenses. So if you were to just do a simple math in your head, you could be like, well, you know what? UTEP might be getting closer to 40% third down conversion rate this week because these other guys are giving up a higher percentage. That's something I like to look at. And so I mentioned third down. I think UTEP's going to be better. Red zone touchdowns. UTEP's have, I'm rounding these numbers off. UTEP converts touchdowns in the red zone about 43% of the time. Middle Tennessee is giving up touchdowns 77% of the time opposing offenses get in the red zone. So like that should be a big bump for what UTEP's used to doing. And then in that running game itself, Middle Tennessee's 122nd in fantasy points allowed for rush defense, giving up over 5 yards a carry, giving up almost 2.5 rushing touchdowns a game.
Yep. Yeah, and it's interesting. I don't know where we would find it. I know he may have been over 30% at some point. That's why I was actually just looking at the numbers.
He started the year that way.
And, he got a lot of hype coming over with his coach, from the FCS there at UTEP. And, we expected him to have a lot more carries that in the early part of the season, but he's finally getting a volume that I think most people expected, and it's paying off. The people that were patient and held on to him, it should pay off. And because his volume is doubled here in the last couple of weeks, so he's the bulk of those carries.
Yeah, he's finally playing at the level that we thought he would be during draft season.
Exactly. Exactly. So pretty interesting because I know if he's down 2.5% rostered percentage points now, and he's at 24. Like I have to imagine he's probably dipped 2 to 5% every week for the last 2 or 3 weeks with people giving up on him. So
Yep.
that's a good, interesting catch that for a guy that might be back in the pool in a lot of leagues that wasn't there when the season started. So, all right. It's back to me now. So I'm going to go running back also. I might as well get one of mine out of the way. Uh, Another guy that's similar to Jackson that you probably didn't want early in the season, but for different reasons. He was banged up and a little bit injured. That's Braden Bennett from Coastal Carolina. He has returned and showing a lot. He's scored, I think, in 4 out of the 5 games he's actually played in, or 3 out of the 4 games he's played in. But he's got a great matchup this week. He's playing against Troy, who's not only 108th on Fantrax against running backs, also 108th in yards allowed rushing, giving up 16 TDs, not quite as many as Marshall, but very close.
Still
It's
two a
just not
game.
it's not the Troy defense. Don't be intimidated by the fact that it's Troy. It's a different staff. It's a different team. It's not the Troy defense you're used to hearing about in the past a couple of years. But Bennett, we didn't necessarily know how carries would be split in the beginning of the season because Coastal, had been a committee, for the last few years. Then he got hurt, so it made it a little more unclear what was going to happen even when he got back. But he scored over 27 points in 2 of the last 3 weeks. He did have a little clunker there in the middle with 6, but I think what you're seeing with the 32 points and the 27 points here in the last 3 weeks are more of what he's got to offer, especially against this defense at Troy that's given up a ton of points. So that's who I'm going with. Also, another member of my 50-team league team. So we've got 2 of those.
You're just pulling that team over to this one now.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Those are all the guys that you have to go deep to find. So it did actually pay off now.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if I took the running backs a little too early, but did steer you guys toward that position, so it may work out for me.
All right.
But I'm going to take a guy here. The matchup isn't the best, but he's just been playing so well that I think I probably should just go ahead and take him only just because of his targets. Yeah, just because of his targets and production.
I thought you were going to go somewhere else. I'm not going to ruin it.
You're not going to? Okay.
Yep.
So we're going to go Caleb Douglas, from Texas Tech.
Yep.
They play Iowa State this week. But his last 3 weeks, 5 for 116. Then he had 9 for 99 and 3 scores, and then he had another 9 for 140, and the tough loss to TCU. But all of this is basically on 10 targets, so he should at least continue that, even if they don't win the game.
Right. Yeah. 10 targets in the last 3 weeks is the note we had this morning because he was the highest scorer for Dorian's team in last week's waiver watch. So if you didn't get him last week, he's under 10% still, so you still got a shot to grab him this week. And this will be week number 2 in a row that he's here.
Yeah. So I had quite a few wide receivers on my list, but his just stood out despite the Iowa State Fantrax matchup.
I like it. He was definitely up there on my list. Joe, we kind of go in the normal route here, so it's back to you. We don't do a snake here again, so it's your pick for pick number 3.
All right. I'm going to close out a position then, and I really like the guy I'm going to pass on. Like, this is a tough one for me, but I'm just going to trust my gut when I first rank these guys.
Okay.
If none of you get this running back I'm not taking, I'm definitely bringing him up at the end of the show.
Okay.
But instead, I'm going to go with Sam Scott from Wyoming.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Matchup with New Mexico. The number one, I'd say the biggest things that tipped me toward him.
Mm-hmm.
New Mexico gives up touchdowns to opposing offenses 83% of the time they reach the red zone. And I know not everybody can see all the numbers I'm mentioning in the spreadsheet like I do, but like if you're over 65% of the time that the defense is giving up touchdowns, that's good. And these guys are at 83. So it's just like, just get down there. You're going to score.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a running back. So I'm not counting on busting 40-yard runs. They just get in the red zone. Somebody's going to score. And Wyoming's not a big powerhouse, for their passing offense. So even though New Mexico's bad against the pass, I have them as ranked 130th in rush defense for fantasy points allowed. They give up almost 6 yards a carry, and they're giving up just under 3 rushing touchdowns a game. So this is one of those where, and especially with the Wyoming backfield, like, will he still be carrying the rock a lot? Will it start getting split up? I like that's something to keep in mind with this Wyoming running game moving forward, especially with Whaley and his health coming back. But I'm gonna swing for the fences. I'm gonna predict he's gonna be carrying the load and just try and see if he can pop off for at least 125 and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, and it looks like he's had 3 games where one where he's over 100, and then a couple where he was really, really close. And I got to say, I love it when I hear a name that I didn't even have on the radar, because then I can go try to find him in other leagues. And he is taken in the 50-team league. I looked him up as you were saying that. Old JD Yankee has got him in the Kings Classic and in the 50-team league. So JD's on him also, which makes sense because he's more of a West Coast guy, and he finds all those guys that are coming out of nowhere on the West Coast. So yeah, that's one. I do see another league where he is available that I might grab him in as soon as we finish this show.
Well, and the tough thing, just for all you guys watching the show, Harrison Whaley will be coming back.
Mm-hmm.
So Sam Scott is a guy just like another player on my list. I'll bring him up if he's not drafted later. But he has fantasy value now because somebody else is hurt. That will change. So it's milk the cow while you can before it goes dry.
All right, there you go. Okay, well, that means I can say running back to finish off, and I will now go wide receiver. There's a freshman that I'm really excited about at San Diego State, Jordan Napier. They're playing against Boise, who is in fantasy ranked 130, giving points up to receivers, 150 passing yards allowed, and teams are usually playing from behind against Boise, so they're throwing the ball a lot. I'm not sure if he's a true freshman or a redshirt freshman, but Jordan Napier is, again, kind of like Roush at Stanford, who is really coming along as the most targeted guy there at San Diego State. He's averaging 9.5 points per game on the season, but he's had 19 and 12.5 these last 2 weeks. So I think he's another guy that's on the rise, and he's going in the direction you want him to go here at the end of the season. Plus, I had to get another guy that was in single-digit percentages because we want to make sure we can get some guys on here that we know you can find. And I love the fact that in just 3 or 4 picks each, we've all got 2 players that are under 9%. It looks like. So good job for you guys as well, and not just following the 30% rule, but we're following the 10% rostered rule so far.
Yeah, no, he not a true freshman. He appeared in 3 games last year, but definitely a lot more production this go around.
Yep.
So I'm very happy that you did go wide receiver.
Okay.
Because I'm going to go to the well again. We got to go Sawyer Robertson. He's just been playing too well.
That's who I thought you were taking last round. I'm like, I know who you're taking.
Yeah, I almost.
I was just one round too early.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I do not mind this matchup.
Okay.
As much as with Caleb Douglas's, but 12 touchdowns last 4 games.
Yep.
I mean, almost average. He's probably averaging a little over about 31 points a game.
Mm-hmm.
This last 4. So, if you can get him, please do.
Yeah.
I mean, he's, they have a bye after this TCU game, but then they had, at West Virginia, at Houston, and they finish up at Kansas.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good little playoff run there if you can get him for those 3.
I've been bringing up Robertson in my waiver wire articles for about a month and a half.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's what we talked about before to you guys listening. Like, don't wait till you absolutely need to start a guy. When a guy's doing good, look ahead, like you guys just said. Great matchup down the run. Like grab those guys earlier, where you don't have to use as high of a waiver wire pick. You can make him your last waiver wire pick because he has a bye week this week. I know
Right.
everyone's going to lay off. You know, strategize it that way. And I love the Robertson pick and I love the Hardy pick. They were two of my favorites. And like I mentioned before, they're really good floor plays. They're still going to get you a lot of points. There's some of I think those two are the safest picks of everyone I had on my draft board today. Those are the two safest picks to score good points.
Yeah, I love that.
Agreed. Yep, agreed. All right,
Love that.
Joe, back to you.
Back to me. I'm obviously, let's see here. I've got only 2 positions left, and I'm going to go with a wide receiver and a guy who's become hot lately. Kind of like what I was talking about, Javon Jackson, someone that's hot lately. He wasn't a name at the start of the year, but I'm going to go with True Edwards from Louisiana Tech. Over the last 3 weeks, he's averaging 22 fantasy points a game. One thing I do not like about this, so for the rest of you guys, I'm letting you know, like, here's a negative I don't like about this guy. Vegas is calling for Louisiana Tech to only score about 18, 19 points this week. That's something I do like to look at. I want to see teams that are going to score, you would prefer in the 30s and 40s.
Right.
Louisiana Tech, one thing where a guy like True doesn't fit bad for a low score is he's kind of the guy scoring everything. Right. So when you have a bad team, but that one good guy, and you usually find that in group of 5. I've not really seen that play out as much unless you're a bottom feeder. Like Mississippi State might kind of be that way. A good example. You just kind of don't see that of, oh, you're going to score under 20 points, but one guy has a good chance of scoring 60% of those points. But he's one of those guys I like. And this is another one of those where Sam Houston State, who they're playing, Sam Houston State's a little worse at giving up red zone touchdowns than Louisiana Tech is at scoring them, so that's going to help. One thing that I do kind of like here, though, is this is more of a competitive matchup. So this isn't you're facing a terrible defense. Right. I take team stats, and then I apply fantasy points to those team stats, and that's what I call fantasy points scored versus fantasy points allowed. I don't like to do just yardage, because you need to take points, you need to take touchdowns, interceptions, things like that into play. So when I look at this, Louisiana Tech, they have the number 39 pass offense for fantasy points scored, by the way I do it. And Sam Houston State has the number 49 pass defense for fantasy points allowed. So Louisiana Tech, they're about 10 points higher in that matchup. So they have a slight edge, but it's going to be one of those things where it's competitive. And it's going to go back and forth. I like to try and find guys that are scoring I like to find defenses where they're giving up at least a touchdown and a half, preferably 2 touchdowns or more a game. Where here, Sam Houston State is only giving up 1.4 passing touchdowns a game. But what I like about this, though, is that Louisiana Tech's run offense is awful. Sam Houston's way better against the run, which is going to force the game plan to go to the air and to funnel those targets to True. So I know I'm going a little long-winded here, but it's kind of for the audience. Like there's things you can look for of a matchup where you're actually facing a team that, for me, if I see a pass defense ranked number 49, I normally don't want to go after that. But when you start stacking some of these different things, like, hey, they are a little bit better, and they stink on the other side of the ball, so we know that the targets are going to be, like, the game plan has to be to funnel the ball toward this guy for them to be successful.
Yeah. Now, that all makes sense. I wanted to see something really quick. Let's see. Yeah, you mentioned how bad Louisiana Tech's running offense was. Yeah, they're 126 in the country. They're just not doing it well at all. So even if they get behind, like you kind of want that in this situation. If Sam Houston's winning big, it still works for you. Even if they aren't in a tight game, they're going to be throwing the ball, trying to come from behind because we know they can't run. So
and that's why I said I like the fact that this isn't we're really good at throwing and they stink at it. This is we're both really compatible and comparable,
right?
But we're just a little bit better. So if it's going to be a shootout and we have to funnel it, we should be able to find to convert third downs, to get the ball into scoring position, to hopefully score. So that's this is a different style of matchup that you can look for instead of just David versus Goliath.
Yeah, and since his third game, he hasn't had under 7 targets. So I think there's a guarantee there that he's gonna get his looks, no matter what. So Good. He was on one, two. He was on my list of 6. So every receiver taken was part of my 6 so far. We'll see how you guys finish off there. I don't have to worry about it, so I will go flip a coin here. I'll save QB for last. I'll take the running back here. It's a guy that Willie B might have had a couple weeks in a row. I know he certainly had him one time a couple weeks ago. That's Delbert Mims from Eastern Michigan. He's been on fire the last 4 weeks and receiving all the volume. He's had 20 plus carries in the last 4 games. And to go along with that, he's averaged 20.1 points per game in the last 4. So don't be deterred by the fact that he's averaging under 15 for the season. Look at those last 4, his recent resume. He's going to get his 20 carries, and with that, he'll at least get you close to the 20 points, if not over that. Going against Toledo, who 52nd in rushing yards and only 8 touchdowns. But again, Mims is going to get the volume. So if he can get his 20 carries, he should at least get you 80 yards, and then hopefully he gets in the end zone and gets you the touchdown as well. But I think he's a safe pick, even though he's playing a fairly tough Toledo rushing defense. I still like him because of the volume.
Yeah. I stay away from him. Stayed away only because of the matchup.
Mm-hmm.
But after this bye, those last 3 weeks, man,
he's
it's
another
gonna be
one.
money.
I want to say there's a number of guys on Eastern Michigan right now you should go look at. Like the matchups, the only reason we're not bringing up their names. Cole Snyder, their quarterback.
Yep.
I've been watching this year go on. I'm like, Eastern Michigan's getting a little good on offense. I need to pay attention to this here.
There you go. Yeah, and Mims, let's see, 16% still, and that's surprising when a guy.
Everyone's ignoring them. Everyone's ignoring Eastern Michigan right now.
Right, and the good thing is when the MAC, they've been pretty bad on offense. We haven't had true MACtion in the last 2 years, really. But the good thing is when they play each other, it doesn't matter as much. Once they get into conference play, it's fair game. Your guys can still produce when they're playing against other MAC teams. So, they're still worth having.
I think that's a result on both sides of the ball. That's a result of the transfer portal.
Oh, yeah.
The MAC, I think, is the conference that's gotten hit the worst.
Yep,
Basically, they just get depleted. All the best offensive players move on. But I think you're finding like a lot of these halfway decent linebackers, safeties, corners are moving out. And like what we're seeing this year, these defenses are not very good. And I just think it's because they can never build any depth as long as the transfer portal is happening the way it's currently happening. That's been... As I'm trying to figure out the observation, that's kind of been where my mind's gone watching them this year.
Yeah, that makes sense. I agree with that. All right, Willie, which way do you want to go here? You're going to get your make Joe wait on his tight end or his wide receiver?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the tight end. There's a couple of them that I like, but this one, we talked about Colton Joseph. He would have been my first. Mm-hmm. So we're going to take his counterpart, and I picked him up last week in a league or two, and that's going to be Pat Conroy. He's just kind of sneaky. I mean, he's a little up and down, but the thing is, he is going to get you a few targets, and that's all you can ask for, this late, from a tight end.
Right.
13.1 3 weeks ago. Then he dipped against Texas State 5.2, and then he had 17.3 in the huge win against Southern.
Right.
So I'll take a chance.
Okay. Yeah, I like it.
If we think that Colton Joseph is going to have a huge game, which I think he will, some of that should trickle down to Conroy.
No, that's a good point. He's got to throw the ball to somebody, right?
That's right.
And it looks like that's one of his favorites. So. And he's averaging 9.1 in the season. So even though it's been a little bit inconsistent, there's not too many tight ends you can grab that are averaging 9 points for the season. He's proven he has the high ceiling. So against this really bad Appalachian State defense, I like to pick Joe. I guess you don't have to take your tight end until the end now. So, but you can.
I mean, I could arguably just take my last 2 picks right now.
Yeah.
I really can.
As long as wide receivers
we all can.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I guess
yeah, obviously,
Willie's got to wait. Willie's got to wait.
Well, and that's just it. So I am taking a wide receiver right now to make him wait. And I'm going to go with a guy who he's been off and on my waiver wire articles all year. This is I'm swinging for the fences or striking out pick.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Jaden Smith from Nevada.
Okay.
He's got Colorado State. This is another one of those where it's like it's not everything just seems like the best thing, but like when Jaden Smith is on, he scores.
Yeah.
Like he's off or he's on. Like the porridge is never just right. It's too hot or too cold with this kid. And he's only been averaging about 11 fantasy points over the last 3 weeks. But with Colorado State, and both these teams aren't that great on offense. Like I'm hoping, Vegas didn't have a line out when I checked today, but like I'm hoping this is going to be a shootout. Some of the stuff I like for Nevada scoring. Nevada scores a touchdown 85% of the time when they reach the red zone. And Colorado State gives up touchdowns 78% of the time when the opponents get in the red zone. So I'm like, that's always something I want to see. I want 6, not 3 when you get in the red zone.
Right.
So I like that. Nevada's not the strongest passing team. They're ranked 95th in fantasy points scored, but Colorado State's 111th in fantasy points allowed. They're giving up 1.75 passing touchdowns a game. And even though, Nevada's good and they're good run wise, I like to try and look at both. And Nevada's a better running team than passing team. Colorado State gives up 1.25 rushing touchdowns a game. And as I mentioned before, 1.75 passing touchdowns. So my hope is maybe that balances out a little bit and you're going to see, not as much rushing scoring, hopefully, and a little bit, like Jaden Smith can, like if he can get 101, I'll take it. Or he might pop off and do something like 150 and 2. You just don't know. But this is one of my, I'm hitting a home run or I'm striking out sort of picks.
Well,
he was number 2 on my list, and I was happy to see that even with Brendan Lewis out of the game, he still got another 12 targets. So
yeah,
that's what I liked about him.
Yeah. And like we said, like there's things to really like about this kid. It's just you need to understand if you're going after him, he is hot and cold. Like there's no medium with him. But what we both like, what Willie B mentioned, and he has the workload and he has the volume. So if you're going to take a risk on a guy who has volume.
Absolutely. J Milk, quarterback.
All right. I will fill in this last spot with a guy who I think has an exceptional matchup despite what it looks like, and that's Michael Van Buren from Mississippi State. Mississippi State is going to take their frustration out on UMass this week. So don't worry about the fact that UMass is 6th in passing defense. I don't think that matters in this game. Is going to, still throw the ball a ton, even if they can run effectively. Van Buren's going to get his passes. That's the way Lebby operates. And again, they've got a lot of frustration to get out of their system, from not having as good of a season up to this point as they would have liked to have. He's been very effective. He's had 26, 22, and 26 in his last 3 since really getting entrenched as the starter there. So I think it's one of those that you can't go wrong with playing against a team that they should outclass, with UMass.
Van Buren, you just said it. He's been coming on the last 3 weeks. I mean, he caught my eye exactly 3 games ago.
Yep.
He's been in my last 2 waiver wire articles. I'm running a little late this week because I've been on the road and traveling for watching game day. But like, he's going to be on this week's one again. This will be the 3rd straight week I brought up Van Buren, even though his fantasy points haven't been great. But like, you're seeing that play. You're starting to see that foundation, that workload. So this is another example of like when we say, hey, here's a guy we're talking about early. Get him before everybody else jumps on. Van Buren, I think, is a perfect example of that type of guy.
Yep. And again, they're playing UMass. And so, don't be scared by the, 6th against the pass. That's probably more because teams were running the ball against UMass. I'm taking a guess there. I haven't seen that, but
I'd agree. And that's why Booth was such a great pick by Willie B. It really is. It really is. Yeah.
Right. But I think the whole team gets points this week for Mississippi State. I don't think they pull the starters too early. I think they leave everybody in to get their confidence up there.
All right. Well, my game's about to kick off here, so we're gonna keep it rolling.
Let's get these last 2 out of the way. We got you.
Here's another one that swing for the fence. Joe's mentioning. but I also like the
Playoffs.
targets. I like the targets from this guy, and
Okay.
so we're going to go Cameron Shanks from UAB.
Hmm.
And like I've been saying before, and when you're playing Tulsa, let's start him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the last couple of weeks, he's had 11 and 12 targets. He had 9.8 this week, only because he didn't get in the end zone. But the week before against Army, he had 20.9. So looking for him to, find the end zone. And let's see if we can keep those receptions up. This should be a decent day for Cameron.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And kind of keep this quick then for my last pick at
Okay.
tight end. I'm going to go with a guy who did not have a good week last week, but I'm going to bet on volume. I'm going to bet on a good matchup. I'm going to go John Michael Gillenberg, Wyoming. Like I had him, and I'll just throw this out there since we're done talking tight ends, anyways. A sneaky pick where if one of you guys got Gillenberg, I was looking at Rivaldo Fairweather from Auburn, just because Auburn matches up so poorly against Vanderbilt in the running game that they're going to have to pass. And when you have a good competitive matchup, like that's what I want for tight ends. I want some competitive games. I don't want like blowout games because just the receiver scores too easily.
Right.
Competitive games, they got to go through multiple reads, and that's where the tight ends get involved more. He's a guy where I think, Vanderbilt's good enough that Auburn's going to have to go through multiple reads. It's just, pray Auburn can throw the ball good enough that he might get one touchdown.
Yep.
Right. I mean, I didn't understand why he wasn't utilized. That would have to be a lot of double coverage if that's the case. But he was just out of the game until the end there. And I think that's still another reason why they lost.
Yeah, it might be.
I mean, one catch for 6 yards, that's not enough for one of your best players on offense. It's just not.
And I don't remember what his targets were.
Four.
But this is another good example, too, of if a good way to sneak guys on the waiver wire ahead of the people in your league. A guy who is good, who just had a crap game, grab him because everyone's going to avoid him. So you can use that last waiver wire pick to go grab him. You don't need to get your first one. You can prioritize how you do it that way.
Right.
And that's like the example of Willie B grabbing Hardy. Like he didn't have the best week last week, but the weeks prior to that show what he's capable of.
Exactly.
All right, Willie, we know you're going to go catch the Niners, but do you have one or two you'd like to mention, even in your rush to get out of here?
Yeah. There's a couple of guys that, the one that I thought would be sneaky, Michael Dukes from Georgia State. I like the UConn matchup that he had. Kentrell Bullock, these are both running backs from South Alabama. 10% rostered. He has a juicy matchup against Georgia Southern. And as far as there was a bunch of wide receivers I would have just taken chances on, but like I said, these are all chances. Jordan Tyson, Ryan Davis from New Mexico, and then Jacob Jordan. I really wanted to see maybe what he does at Oklahoma when they play Maine this week, if they can finally find a guy who they can go to. And the last couple of weeks, he's kind of been that guy. I think 6 catches in both the last 2 games. And, they're so severely depleted, they need someone to step up.
Okay. Yeah, Dukes was off my radar. I'm glad you mentioned him. I love learning from everybody we have on here, including you, Willie. So that's good. I'll try not to learn from you in the other leagues.
With Michael Dukes, let's see. Let's see if I can pull that up real quick here. So the last couple of weeks, I don't know why my screen is fidgeting. Against Old Dominion, he had 16.6, and then Marshall he had 28.6. And then last week we talked about App State's bad defense. He still had another 16.4.
Yeah.
So and he also, does well out of the backfield.
Yeah, I'm looking at his carries. This guy is interesting. He doesn't get a lot of carries, but his yards per carry is off the charts. It looks like he's a guy that breaks some really big ones. His long, he's had runs over 26 yards in each of the last 3 weeks, or the last 3 games, I should say. So he's a guy that's kind of a make or break guy. It looks like who's gonna break a long touchdown run, or since he doesn't get the volume, might get shut down. But he's a good one.
And then out of the backfield too. I mean, he had six for 73, as far as a receiver is concerned. Then he went 7 for 58 and 2 scores. And then, last week against App State, it didn't do anything, but he has that capability.
Okay. I'll throw one or two out here. I had a receiver left over, a mediocre matchup. That's Elijah Spencer from Minnesota. He's another guy that's rostered in a really small percentage at 5%, but he's emerging there at Minnesota. He had 28 points this week, 12 points the week before. So again, a guy who's on the rise. You can kind of just sort. Like Joe and I were talking earlier in the week. A lot of what you need to do now you don't need to be looking at the season point per game average. You need to use the ability on Fantrax to narrow it down to a certain number of weeks and really look for guys who the last 3 or 4 weeks have been turning it on, and kind of filter out what happened in weeks 1 through 3 or 1 through 4, and just look at what's going on these last few weeks. And guys like Elijah Spencer will definitely stand out. You don't need to look at his 10.9 points per game. Look at the fact that he's averaged 20 in the last 2 weeks or 18 in the last 2 weeks. And, that's the trend that you're looking for. So I would say him. Another guy, I just didn't want to double up on UTSA guys. I think the quarterback at UTSA, Owen McCowan, is a solid pick as well. He's had over 24 points in each of the last 3 weeks. So that was the one leftover QB that I had on there. I just didn't want to double up in this contest, on UTSA. So I spread it out a little bit, but that's it for me. Joe, any final players you want to remark on?
Yeah, I've got 2 running backs and 2 wide receivers.
Okay.
The running back I could have taken instead of Sam Scott. The reason I passed is he's an amazing floor option. I'm swinging for home runs, which is the only reason I passed on him. If I was going to just do a conventional, this is week 4, and I'm going to make a play, I would have taken this guy over Sam Scott, and that's Justin Ellison, Indiana.
Oh, yeah.
He's last 3 weeks averaging 22, almost 23 fantasy points a game. He had a bigger game against Washington than what you can expect normally by him. He's an awesome floor play. And we mentioned before, some guys that cash him in now before the starters get healthy again. Elijah Gillum, Fresno State. I'm not a huge fan of the matchup, but I'm bringing up his name more so like I talked about with Sam Scott. There's certain players where just if they're out there now and available, grab them. Once the starter becomes healthy, you can just drop them and go look for somebody else later. Once again, this isn't a trying to play out for the whole season sort of thing. And then at receiver, kind of a sneaky pick, kind of a home run pick. Both these guys were I got my number 1 and my number 2 receiver on my draft board. These are my number 3 and my number 4. None of you guys took them. The sneaky pick, Victor Snow, Buffalo.
Okay.
Him on the list.
Yep, he's been scoring 20 points a game the last 3 weeks, and he's playing Akron. Enough said.
Right.
Yeah.
The other guy is a super freshman. He's been coming into his own. With a matchup with Louisville, something tells me this might be a breakout game, like maybe his 100-yard, 1 touchdown game, and that's TJ Moore from Clemson. Something tells me like this might be a good matchup for him to look like an upperclassman.
Yep. All right. Very good. Appreciate that. I got one other that I wanted to mention that people could look to pick up this week, even though he's not playing. Because as you said, Joe, when guys are going into buys or have a buy, they tend to get ignored. But I don't think people should be ignoring Hauser from ECU. He's on 6% of teams. Yep. The 2 games he started after the other quarterback went down with an injury, I think, he's had 30.6 and 31.5. And once they return from the bye, which would be for your playoff games, they're playing FAU, Tulsa, and North Texas, all teams that are very bad against the pass. So, Caton Hauser versus ECU, he should hold on to that job no matter what now that he's proven to be more effective than the QB that he replaced. So that's the one guy on a bye that I'll mention that doesn't fit into this contest, but is certainly somebody you can go grab this week. And with that, everybody go check out Let Purple Rain, REIGN.com. Joe's got some great info there. A lot of the stuff that he's reciting here, you can see, on that website behind the paywall, but it's worth the money. Joe, any final departing thoughts?
Yeah, and you mentioned a paywall. I do want to throw this out to everybody as well. Any content that's on my site that's quote unquote old, every single thing that I publish during draft season right now has no paywall. You can
Okay.
go read it all. Figure out if what I'm giving you is worth the money to pay. If you go back 2 weeks in the regular season, I've dropped the paywall. So you can go back and see what do my full waiver wire articles look like. Go back 3 weeks. You can read them. So I'm keeping stuff that's relevant, yes, behind a paywall. We do this for a reason and try and make some money. But at the same time, I'm making sure you can go back and you can see, am I going to give you your money's worth before you decide to do it? And even if you're not sure for that, I'm going to give you a 7-day free preview.
There you go.
So you can see exactly what you want to do for 7 days, figure it out, see if you like it, and you don't have to spend a dime.
Right. And I love the fact that you gave the type of stats you gave so people get a real taste of the stuff that they can find there as well.
Right.
Willie, we always give you the final word, so send us out of here.
Yeah, I will say this, talking about the buy, if you need an easy 15 points from a receiver, go get Justin Lockhart. I've been saying it. I've been saying it for over a month. Go get this kid. 11% rostered is that's ridiculous.
Right.
So pick him up right now. He's on a buy, but pick him up.
Okay, there you go.
So, but other than that, I thank you guys for watching and listening, and good luck this week.